When your newborn feels warmer than usual and you're home alone, do you stay calm or does fear take over? Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're going to explore Linda's first hours without Quang, when one tiny change in the baby's temperature turns love into a real-time test of courage. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. The baby's cry reached Linda before her eyes fully opened. It wasn't the hungry whine she'd already learned. This one was sharper, like the baby had startled herself awake and didn't know how to get back. Quang sat up at the same time Linda did. He leaned over the bassinet and slid 2 fingers under the baby's collar, checking her neck the way the nurse had shown them. His face tightened with focus. "She feels a little warm," he said. Linda pushed herself upright carefully, one hand bracing the mattress. "Warm like she's sick. Maybe she's just too bundled." Quang lifted the baby, slow and practiced, supporting her head as she kicked and protested. He glanced at the bedside table. "Thermometer?" Linda grabbed it too fast, fumbling the button. The beep sounded too loud. The baby cried harder, tiny fists punching the air, and Linda felt her mind sprint toward worst-case stories. Quang rocked in short, steady motions. "Hey," he murmured to the baby, then to Linda, "We're just checking." Linda slid the thermometer under the baby's arm and held the elbow close. Quang watched the baby, then shifted his gaze to Linda's face, making sure she stayed with him. "Breathe," he said quietly. The thermometer beeped again. Linda stared at the number and felt her lungs loosen. "It's not high," she whispered. "It's okay." Quang leaned in, nodded once, and let out a slow breath. "Okay, let's cool her down a bit anyway." Linda pulled back the blanket. Under it, the baby's onesie was damp at the neckline. Guilt flared. Had she overdressed her? Quang didn't let her sink into it. He carried the baby to the living room and lowered himself into the armchair, then opened his shirt and placed the baby against his chest, skin to skin. The baby's cry didn't stop right away, but it changed. The sharp edges softened into hiccups, then small grunts. Quang kept rocking, barely moving, just enough for the baby to feel the rhythm of his breathing. Linda stood close, arms folded over her middle. "I hate how scared I am," she said. "You're scared because you love her," Quang answered. Linda blinked hard. "I keep thinking I'll miss something," she admitted, "like I'll be too slow." Quang caught her hand and squeezed once. "You noticed," he said. "You woke up. You checked." The baby's body began to relax against him. Linda watched Quang's shoulder rise and fall, and something in her chest eased. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Quang glanced toward it without shifting the baby. "Your meeting," Linda said. Quang nodded. 9, first one back. It meant returning to the world outside their apartment, to a life that didn't pause for feeding times. Linda swallowed. "Do you have to go?" she asked. Quang didn't rush to reassure her. He looked down at the baby, then back at Linda. "I want to be here," he said, "but I also don't want you to feel like you can't do this." Linda took a breath and forced herself to be honest. "I can handle a few hours," she said. "I'm just shaky." "Then we make it smaller," Quang said. "We make a plan." He nodded toward the diaper bag by the door. Linda brought it over and unzipped it, still not trusting that they'd packed the right things. Quang added wipes, an extra onesie, the thermometer, and a small bottle. Then he took a scrap of paper and wrote in neat lines. Feed time, diaper check, temperature if she felt warm again, the clinic number and his number. Linda watched the list form and felt a strange comfort in it. "You didn't have to write it," she said. "I know," he answered. "But when you're tired, you'll want something to look at." The baby gave a long, sleepy sigh against Quang's chest. Quang smiled faintly and kissed her hair. He refilled Linda's water bottle and set it on the table within reach. Then he changed into a button-down shirt, leaving the top button open, tie loose in his hands. When he came back, he crouched in front of Linda so they were eye level. "Call me for anything," he said. "I will." Quang studied her expression. "Don't try to sound brave," he said gently. "Just be real." Linda's throat tightened. "Okay." Quang brushed his thumb over her knuckles. "If you need me to say you're doing fine, you call. And if I call too much, then I answer," he said simply. He kissed her forehead, careful, lingering, then kissed the baby's cheek. The baby blinked slowly, face relaxed now, as if she recognized him by warmth and scent more than sight. At the door, Quang paused and looked back once, memorizing the scene without drama. Linda lifted her hand in a small wave. "We're okay," she said, half promise, half practice. Quang nodded and the door clicked shut. The apartment went quiet. The baby shifted in Linda's arms, warm and alive. Linda pulled the paper list toward her and traced the first line with her fingertip, grounding herself in something concrete. The baby's mouth searched the air and Linda adjusted her shirt. When the latch happened, clean and steady, Linda felt her shoulders drop. The baby's eyes fluttered, then closed again. Linda stayed still, listening to the soft swallow, the tiny breaths. She focused on small things, the warmth of the baby's cheek, the weight of her own feet on the rug, the steady hum of the refrigerator. Her phone lit up with a message. Made it downstairs. "I love you. Text me anytime." Linda typed back with one thumb, keeping the baby close with the other. "We're feeding. She's calm." She sent it and stared at the screen for a moment, surprised by the simple fact that she could do this. One step, then the next. The baby's hand loosened, fingers uncurling as she drifted back towards sleep. Linda rested her palm over that tiny hand and let her breath out slowly, letting the quiet settle around them. The baby slept in a quiet pocket of time, her fists unclenched for once. Linda sat on the edge of the couch and let herself listen to the silence. It wasn't peaceful yet. It was fragile, like a glass on a table you didn't trust. She rinsed bottle parts and set them on a towel. She wiped the counter even though it was already clean. Her hands wanted work, anything that felt like control. When she finally sat again, she pulled the paper list closer and traced the first line with her fingertip. Feed, diaper, check, call. The words were plain, but they held her steady. Late morning, the baby stirred with a small complaint, not a cry, more like a warning. Linda changed her diaper, talking softly the way Quang did, keeping her movements slow. The baby kicked once, then settled against Linda's forearm as if she'd decided to tolerate the world for another minute. Linda lifted her and felt it. Warmth at the back of the neck, a little dampness at the collar. Not burning, not alarming, just warm enough to wake up Linda's fear. She didn't panic. She opened the curtains a little and loosened the baby's onesie. She wiped her neck with a soft cloth. The baby's eyes stayed half open, heavy with sleep, mouth making small, searching motions. Linda checked the temperature again. The number was slightly higher than earlier. Still not high. Still, Linda's heart sped up as if the digits were shouting. She stood there holding the thermometer, staring at it until her vision softened. Then she did the thing she'd promised herself she wouldn't feel guilty about. She called Quang. It rang twice before he answered. His voice was low, like he'd stepped out of a room full of people. "Linda, I checked again," she said. "She's warm. It's a little higher. She's still eating and she had a wet diaper, but I'm scared." "Okay," Quang said. Tell me what you see, not what you're afraid of. What you see. Linda looked down at the baby. Her eyes were open now, calm, tracking nothing in particular. Her breathing was even. She looks like herself, Linda said. Just warm. Good, Quang replied. Take off one layer. Do skin to skin with you. Offer a feed if she wants it. Then we monitor. Linda sat and pressed the baby against her chest. Bare skin to bare skin. The baby made a tiny sound and relaxed, her hand spreading against Linda's ribcage as if she'd found the right place. Quang's breath softened on the line. If calling the clinic helps, call, he said. That's what they're there for. What if I'm overreacting? Linda asked, the words small. Then you get reassurance, Quang said. That's not a waste. Linda swallowed. Are you okay to talk? I stepped out, he said. I've got a minute. There was a pause, and then Quang added, quieter. I'm scared too. I just don't want it to run the day. Linda felt her throat tighten. Okay, she whispered. I'm going to call. Text me what they say, Quang replied. The nurse at the clinic sounded calm in a way Linda couldn't fake yet. Linda gave the numbers, the feeding, the wet diapers, the baby's alertness. The nurse asked about coughing, vomiting, rash. Linda answered, no. Keep her lightly dressed, the nurse said. Skin to skin is great. If she keeps feeding and acting normal, that's reassuring. If you want, come in today for a quick check. Sometimes newborns just run warm. Yes, Linda said, relief coming out in the word. I want to come in. She texted Quang as soon as she hung up. Nurse says likely normal, but we can come in for a quick exam. I want to. His reply came fast. I'm coming home. Leaving now. Linda didn't argue. She packed the diaper bag with the basics, then tucked the paper list into the side pocket like it was a lifeline. She changed the baby into the lightest onesie she had and held her close, watching her breathing, letting each steady breath teach her something. Quang arrived with his jacket open and his tie loosened. He didn't look dramatic. He looked like he'd moved as quickly as he could without dropping anything important. He kissed Linda's forehead, then looked down at the baby. You did the right thing, he said. Linda's voice trembled. I just needed to hear that it's okay to ask. It's always okay, Quang said. They went together, Quang carrying the car seat, Linda walking carefully beside him. In the clinic waiting room, the air smelled clean and familiar. Other parents sat with the same tired eyes, the same careful hands. Linda felt less like she was failing and more like she was joining something real. The nurse weighed the baby and checked her temperature again. She's warm, she said kindly, but she's in range. Linda let out a breath she'd been holding in her shoulders. The doctor came in, gentle and efficient, listening to the baby's chest, checking her ears, pressing lightly on her belly. The baby protested for a moment, then quieted when Quang leaned close and murmured to her, his voice a steady thread. All looks good, the doctor said. Keep her lightly dressed. Watch for true fever and behavior changes. Refusing feeds, unusual sleepiness, trouble breathing. But what you described sounds like normal variation. You're paying attention. That matters. Linda nodded, eyes damp but calm. Thank you, she said. Outside, the air felt cooler, like it had room for her lungs again. Quang reached for her hand as they walked back. At home, Quang set the diaper bag down and taped a fresh page to the fridge. He wrote a short guide, numbers to watch, signs to call, steps to take, plain and simple, meant for tired brains. Linda leaned against the counter and watched him. You turned fear into a plan, she said. Quang capped the pen. Plans don't fix everything, he said, then pulled her into a careful hug. But they give us something to do besides spiral. They ate something small at the table while the baby slept nearby. They spoke in low voices about ordinary things, how quickly the day had moved, how the baby's hands always found their way to a fist. Linda noticed she could taste her food again. She could hear her own thoughts without them shouting. Later, Quang settled on the couch with the baby asleep on his chest, her weight heavy and trusting. Linda stood for a moment watching the rise and fall of them. Quang's hand spread wide on the baby's back, steady without squeezing. Quang opened his eyes and met hers. "You did good today," he said. Linda walked over and sat beside him, careful not to jostle the baby. She rested her head on his shoulder. "We did," she whispered. Quang's hand covered hers where it lay on the baby's back. The apartment was quiet again, but now it felt like a place to breathe. Linda closed her eyes and let that be enough.
Xin chào. Trong cái lạnh cắt da của vùng cao, Linda lủi thủi một mình trên nương sắn, quanh quẩn với đàn gà, đàn vịt, căn nhà sàn cũ kỹ. Lòng lúc nào cũng thấy cô đơn, mặc cảm và bị cảm giác bị bỏ rơi. Đúng lúc đó Quang trở về, lo lắng dặn cô không được đi vào những nơi vực sâu nguy hiểm và hứa sẽ bù đắp cho những thiếu thốn của cô. Vài ngày sau, Quang cùng người khiêng lên một chiếc tủ gỗ lớn chắc chắn đặt giữa căn nhà sàn, giúp Linda lần đầu được treo gọn quần áo, chăn màn như một người thực sự có nhà. Anh xin nghỉ làm ở lại chăm sóc, cùng nấu ăn với cô, chế củi, trò chuyện mỗi tối. Chiếc tủ mới dần trở thành biểu tượng cho tương lai vững chắc và sợi dây gắn kết âm thầm giữa hai người. Mọi người hãy like, share và subscribe để ủng hộ giúp mình nhé.